Hello everybody, I'm here to announce another drum library. It's been a very busy year at GGD. This time we're coming back to our One Kit Wonder series of drum libraries, and we're bringing those onto our own platform in style. We are launching with a product that I absolutely love. It's One Kit Wonder, the Downbeat. Now, the Downbeat is a wildly popular kind of heavy music focused podcast. It's a clothing brand and a kind of drum-focused YouTube channel, all run by the amazing Craig Reynolds, who's been a friend of mine for many, many years. He's got an incredible sounding drum kit. I think quite often gets told he has the best sounding drum kit on YouTube. And we spared absolutely no expense capturing that drum kit as best as possible and packaging it into a drum library. And I really do think that this sets a new standard for GGD products when it comes to out-of-the-box sound. Right, so let's get straight into it. As I think you can see on the GUI, the graphics are absolutely unbelievable on this product. I'm hugely, hugely proud of that. Shout out to the design team for putting together. I mean, I personally don't think I've ever seen a drum library that looks this good and has so much detail in the GUI. The kit that we're looking at is Craig's personal Tama Star Maple kit. That's the top of the line Tama drums. We've got a phenomenal bell brass Tama snare drum, as well as a prototype snare drum, which is based on a kind of thick aluminium shell. So we've actually got two snare drums in this kit, and they're both kind of main snare sounds that you can choose between to get two different flavors. As well as Craig's personal collection of Zildjian cymbals, which include what became known as the K Projection Ride, which is the kind of crashable megabell Zildjian ride that Craig developed, which has become an absolute smash hit among drummers. And we've sampled that in all its glory, as well as his kind of signature set of quite large diameter cymbals, which just sound absolutely amazing. So Craig travelled down to my neck of the woods at Real World Studios. We sampled his kit in the Woodroom, which to me is just absolutely one of the best sounding spaces to record drums in on the planet. It's where we recorded, for example, Proprietary 5 and the associated drum library. And we took great pains to replicate and improve on the sound that Craig is known for from his drum streams with this very same kit, albeit putting it in an absolutely world-class space. As you'll see in the GUI, it looks like the room in which he does his drum streams, replete with his skateboard and his t-shirt designs, but the kit itself was actually sampled in this amazing space with, amazing ultra high-end vintage microphones, all through the fully vintage Neve front end, which is on offer at the Real World Woodroom. So world-class signal chain being used across the board here on the library. Now, as with all of our One Kit Wonder libraries, there is no compromise made on the sampling itself. We are sampling to the same excruciatingly fine detailed amount of velocity layers, round robins, as we do with our flagship libraries. So the amount of realism that you can extract from this kit is truly unbelievable. I would say I'm so blown away with how this kit sounds. The One Kit Wonder concept gives you a fixed sound. In the past, there was no way of modifying that beyond affecting levels in our previous instruments. But now that we're on our own sampler, we've been able to go a little bit deeper, and I think this is really exciting for the One Kit Wonder range in general. We now have a pared down version of the mixer, which you find in Modern and Massive 2 and Matt Garstka library. Very functional DAW style mixer, but here it's simplified to macro controls, which are controlling very complex signal chains under the hood. So every channel from kick drum to room mics has two macro controls, one for compression and one for EQ. And again, to be really clear, these macro controls are affecting quite complicated signal paths. It's not a single compressor and a single EQ. These are very specific custom designed mix settings, which can be blended from 0% all the way up to full or turned off altogether at the click of a button. The kick, snare, and in this case, the side snare also have a blended one-shot, which you control the blendable level of. The master bus has two parameters. You've got polish and limiter. So polish is applying some EQ and some other subtle sound shaping, while the limiter is boosting up the volume and clipping the peaks a little bit to be able to get the library to a point where it's outputting very loud without any overs. Again, both of those are bypassable. And every channel also has two sends. One to a parallel compression bus, which has optional fast and slow attack time modes. And it's not just the attack time that's being adjusted there. There's changes made to the global settings on that compressor when you switch between those two modes. And then you've got 3 reverb modes going short, medium, and long. And you can still, you can define the send levels across the whole mixer to those 2 channels, as well as the fader volumes as well. So it's very flexible. Similar to our major libraries, you do have control over the inputs into the group channels. So that's the overheads, the mono room, and the stereo room channels that we've got here. So you can control how loud each instrument is in those channels. And obviously you've got your standard mute, solo, polarity reverse, pan, and level controls across the board as well. While all of these mix channels are by default routed to the stereo output, you can still send them to external outputs so that you can spread the channels out in your DAW and mix them there. And if you were to just go through and bypass all of the settings on the mixer, you would essentially have a raw drum kit that you could then mix to your heart's content. So this is a major step up in the functionality of our One Kit Wonder range, where before you were kind of fixed at a certain level of mixed. This, I would say, goes further towards absolutely final, polished, mix ready, but also has the option to go all the way back to completely raw or anything in between, as well as the options of keeping the mix settings but not the parallel compression, or keeping the mix settings not the master bus treatment, or any combination thereof. So we spent a lot of time refining the feature set for the One Kit Wonder mixer, and this is what we're going to see carried forwards into other One Kit Wonder products. We wanted it to offer genuine usable optionality here, flexibility, but I also just love that you can leave everything on and have an absolutely killer drum mix. I can't really overstate how proud I am of the drum sound that we've got out of this kit. I mean, this particular kit of Craig's has to be one of the absolutely, literally one of the best sounding drum kits I've ever heard, especially that kick drum, that amazing sounding 24-inch kick drum that he's got. And it's captured in so much dynamic detail that I think it's actually tremendously versatile as well. So, this is a product that I think could give a lot of lasting usability. It could be something that people use for many, many years, which is always what we're aiming for with GTT. We don't want to be releasing products that are a kind of flash in the pan. We want them to be very self-contained, versatile tools that people can use as their principal sound for years to come. And to show what you can do with the mixer, we've created over 30 presets, which I think you'll find show quite a breadth of sound. So despite the fact that we're working with a more limited control set, between those, the one-shot samples, the balance that you can create across the faders, the way you can use the parallel and reverb sends, the panning that you can do, there's actually all manner of stuff which you can do with this mixer to generate all sorts of different sounds. So definitely check out the presets and go through those. They also offer various kind of routing options, starting points as well, so that if you want to just jump straight into doing multi-out, you can do that. Now, in addition to the sounds, Craig has also created an amazing selection of drum grooves, which come preloaded in the groove player. These include some of his kind of signature grooves, and if you know Craig, you probably know the ones I'm talking about. And these have been played to perfection and really poured over to make sure that they sound utterly realistic with this kit. And I really love Craig's approach to drumming in heavy music, because not only does he know how to do super intense, high energy, exciting sounding drum beats, but he can also do very nuanced stuff. I know he's got a really deep history in kind of progressive drumming. He's a huge fan of gospel chops, and he utilizes a lot of these nuances and details that you don't often find in heavy music drumming. So we've got everything from extreme metal blast beats to Latin grooves to the kind of signature grooves, which often utilize his signature ride. All the way through to spacious, extremely heavy breakdown patterns as well. It really is an amazing repository of heavy music grooves with some really interesting beats thrown in there as well that you wouldn't expect. So, I'm super, super happy with how Craig's grooves have translated in this library. I think we've managed to achieve extremely high realism. And I'd advise actually kind of pulling these out of the product into your DAWs, you can, to actually analyze kind of the way that the velocities work. As with all of our libraries, we're giving you the absolute hardest hits at the top end. So programming at 127 is, Craig's pretty well known for standing up and absolutely smashing his kit live. That's what you're getting when you're programming at 127, which might be entirely appropriate for the moment, but it's also not how Craig or any other drummer that I know drums when they're in the studio. There tends to be a little bit more control, and you'll find that reflected in the MIDI here. That's a really good guideline of, generally keeping your main hits at somewhere between 110 to 115 on the velocity scale. That, across all of our libraries, tends to translate to like a confident playing velocity that a drummer would actually use when they're playing in a focused way in a studio setting. And that often tends to sound a little bit more balanced and musical than the extremely hard hits, which are so attack focused and sometimes get a little bit kind of overly bright or thinner as the drums choke a little bit. And as I say, drummers like Craig live do sometimes hit that hard, so it's important to have that accounted for within the product. But yeah, keeping your velocities down in that 110 to 115 range, sometimes lower, especially on the toms for fast fills, I think is the way to go if you want this to be easy to mix in a way that sits into a track. Still sounds really impactful. These aren't weak hits, but it's just not kind of bringing your arm all the way up here for every strike, which is clearly, as well at certain tempos, just physically impossible. But do as you will with the velocity. If you like the sound of it being played at full velocity, then by all means do. I'm also mentioning this specifically for e-kit players when they're setting up their velocity sensitivities on their kit, because oftentimes the sensitivities on an e-kit will be set up such that 127 is extremely easy to achieve. And I think in those situations, it is sometimes to the detriment of the sound. So try and make it so that your main hits are not reaching all the way up to the top of the velocity scale. And actually, it's good that we're talking about e-kits, because a very important thing to look at are the mapping configurations which this library comes with. Because as with our other standalone releases, this one comes with a huge number of mappings to correspond to almost all of the extremely popular third-party softwares and hardware. So if you're an e-kit player or you're bringing MIDI across from other company drum libraries or default drum libraries that come in your DAW, you should be able to load up a map here and at least get 99% of the way to things coming out right, barring any mismatches in just how many drums and cymbals there are on offer. There's also legacy maps for our older softwares, as well as general MIDI and our Modern Massive 2 map, which is kind of our default standard moving forwards. You'll also find on the mapping page the hi-hat CC controls, which are quite crucial for getting set up on a new e-kit at least, making sure that the hi-hat is responding properly. We've got an inversion learning, as well as minimum and maximums, as well as also the polyphonic aftertouch, which is a feature that we now support as of a few months ago. So we think you'll find that if you're an e-kit player, you're extremely well catered to here. And there is a certain simplicity to a one-kit wonder that I think lends itself quite well to use with an e-kit. That's kind of a lack of needing to think too much about the software. You can just plug in and treat it like it's your own personal acoustic kit. In terms of the actual articulations which we've got on offer here, we do have sampled the right and left beaters of the kick drum. So that's one kick drum, but two pedals. And you'll notice in the MIDI grooves that come supplied with this that the right and left pedals being used as they would be by a drummer does lend a pretty amazing amount of realism here, because it is quite a distinct sound where the beaters are hitting at slightly different spots on the head. And we sampled those with appropriate difference, if that makes sense, in terms of like the intensity that they were played as well. So you'll find that if you do want to go granular, you can extract a lot of realism by utilizing that. But we've also got this ADK, which stands for automatic double kick articulation as well. And that at a certain speed will just automatically start alternating right and left. So at the same time, if you don't want to think about it, you can use that as your kind of default kick articulation, and slower speeds will be played with the right pedal only, and then once you cross that threshold, it will start alternating like double kick. Scrolling down, you'll see that this is something very rare in our libraries. We do have rim clicks sampled on the toms, because that is an articulation that Craig uses in his own drumming. And then from the toms on down, the articulations are identical to those that you would find in, say, Modern and Massive 2. So you've got the whole gamut of hi-hat articulations, the CCs. You've got the crashable ride, which includes both the kind of bow bell articulations and the crash and the choke as well. And then crashing and choke articulations for all of the remainder of the cymbal. So all in all, anything that you hear Craig play himself, you can replicate with this kit, which I think is quite neat. And with that, there's nothing more to say than thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for the support through 2025, which undoubtedly has been a landmark year for us at GGD. And thank you so much to everyone on the GGD team for making this a reality, from initial sampling through to putting together these assets for the videos to go out there. It really is a team effort, and it takes months and months of hard work to get something like this done, and you all have smashed it. So thank you so much, and I hope you love using One Kit Wonder, the Downbeat.